The morning light slipped in through the blinds, soft and golden, casting narrow lines across the unfamiliar ceiling. I blinked against the weight of sleep, my limbs tangled in a sheet that smelled faintly of cologne and something warm, something masculine. A dull throb echoed in my head, not painful, just foggy. My eyes adjusted slowly, and that's when I noticed I wasn't alone. Beside me, half turned on his side, was Dean Carter, the football star of our college, known for his talent, his temper, and his carefully curated detachment from everyone outside the team. I knew him like everyone else did, from the sidelines, from the roar of the crowd, from the posters in the campus gym. But I didn't know him like this. I didn't know how his bare shoulder dipped with each breath, how the corner of his mouth softened when he slept, or the slight scar on his jaw that was invisible from afar. Panic surged through me in waves. My throat tightened as I sat up slowly, careful not to wake him. My clothes were strewn across the floor, a shirt over a chair, one sock by the door. My phone lay face down on the nightstand next to a glass of water and a folded note. I reached for it, hands shaking. "Let's talk." "Dean." The words were written in blocky, rushed handwriting, as if he hadn't been sure whether to leave the note at all. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart knocking loudly in my chest. Last night played out in fragments, music pulsing through a crowded room, Dean's eyes catching mine across a sea of strangers. There was a game. We'd both been there. Someone had handed me a drink. We talked, I think. Or maybe we just stood too close for too long. I remembered the way he smiled, not like he was trying to charm anyone, but like something had genuinely surprised him. I remembered the way his hand brushed mine when he handed me a second drink, and how I didn't pull away. The details vanished as quickly as they came. All I had now was this stillness, this quiet intimacy that I hadn't asked for but couldn't bring myself to undo. Dean stirred beside me, just a twitch, and I froze. But he didn't wake. I could leave, slip out, pretend this never happened. People would believe it. No one would question me. No one would believe me either. But something anchored me to that bed. A silence, dense and waiting. A curiosity. A pull. I slid the note into my pocket and settled back onto the edge of the mattress. I didn't know what any of this meant, or what would happen next. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This morning wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning of something I didn't yet understand. Dean woke slowly, blinking against the light with a groggy smile, as if waking up next to someone wasn't unusual. But it was. For both of us. I sat still, unsure of what to say or how to even look at him. The silence stretched until he broke it, voice low and gravelly. "You stayed." I nodded, unsure what that said about me, about us. "Your note. I figured you wanted to talk." Dean sat up, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I did. Still do." He looked different in the morning, less polished, less invincible. Without the helmet, the swagger, or the crowd, he seemed oddly human, vulnerable even. It unsettled me. Or maybe it comforted me. I couldn't decide which. "I don't remember much," I admitted. "Just flashes." Dean leaned back against the headboard, eyes fixed on the ceiling. "You weren't drunk if that's what you're worried about. We talked. A lot. You were honest. So was I." His words left a strange echo in the room. Honest. That wasn't something I associated with someone like Dean. Someone with so much to lose. He glanced over. "I've seen you around, always reading, always alone." The comment caught me, off guard. "You noticed?" He gave a short laugh, more to himself than to me. "I notice more than people think." We dressed in quiet motions, exchanging glances that said more than words. Then, without really planning it, We stepped out, into the soft light of campus together. No one paid us much attention, just two guys walking. But everything between us was different now, delicate and unspoken. At the edge of the quad, he stopped. "You asked me something last night. You asked if I ever wished I could stop pretending. And what did you say?" I didn't answer. "Not then, but yeah, I do, all the time." He sounded tired, as if the truth weighed more than he could carry. I wanted to ask why he hid, why someone like him, with all his power and charm, couldn't just be who he was. But I already knew. The world wasn't built to hold someone like Dean without consequences. We found a quiet bench under an oak tree. Leaves trembled in the morning breeze. He looked at me, really looked, like he wanted to remember the exact way my eyes caught the light. "I don't know what this is," he said, "or what it means, but I don't want it to be nothing." That was the first honest thing either of us had said all morning. It hung between us, warm and hopeful, tangled with uncertainty. I nodded slowly, unsure of where this would lead, only certain I wanted to follow. "Okay," I said. "Let's not let it be nothing." And in that moment, as the sun broke fully, over the horizon, I believed we meant it, even if neither of us knew how fragile promises could be. We met in shadows and silence, tucked between the demands of his world and the boundaries of mine. Our moments were brief, stolen between practices, lectures, and expectations, but they felt infinite while they lasted. Dean was always careful. We never met in public, never walked too close, never touched in the daylight. But when the doors closed and the noise fell away, he was different, gentle, attentive, real. I didn't mind the secrecy at first. I convinced myself that what we had was too new to expose, too precious to risk. We lay side by side in his dorm some nights, legs tangled beneath the covers, talking about everything and nothing. I learned how he hated the spotlight but craved the game, how his dad still thought football was the only thing he'd ever be good at. He said my quiet made him feel safe. I told him I didn't know how to be anything else. Still, doubt crept in, small and persistent. When I passed him on campus, his eyes would flick away, pretending not to see me. When his teammates laughed, I wondered if they were laughing about me. The space between who he was with me and who he became out there started to stretch thin, like a thread pulled too tight. Then it happened. I was walking through the quad one evening, just past the practice field, when I heard his voice. Confident, louder than usual. I paused behind the tall hedges, hidden by instinct. He was laughing, with two of his teammates, and my name came up, casual, careless. "Come on, man," one of them said. "You and that library guy, tell me that was just a one-time thing." Dean didn't hesitate. "Yeah, it was nothing." His voice was steady, final, cold. I stood frozen, the words sinking into me like ice. My heart didn't shatter, it went silent. That silence followed me all the way back to my room, where I sat on the edge of my bed, shoes still on, staring at the floor as if it could explain any of it. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I didn't rage. I just disappeared. When he texted later that night, "Everything okay?" I didn't answer. What could I say? That I overheard the truth he was too afraid to tell me. That the version of him I held on to only existed behind closed doors. The next morning, I passed him on the stairs outside the student union. He looked at me, unsure. I walked past him without a word. His hand twitched like he wanted to stop me, but he didn't. And that was all. I needed to know. Whatever we were, whatever it had meant to me, wasn't something he was ready to carry. And I wasn't willing to be invisible anymore. Weeks passed. The space where Dean had once existed in my life grew quiet, but not empty. His absence echoed in strange places. My favorite spot in the library where he once sat across from me. The corner of the coffee shop where we whispered after dark. The field where I used to watch him practice without being seen. Everything around me still held his outline. I hated that. I hated how remembering him felt like reopening a wound I hadn't agreed to receive. I kept my distance, buried myself in coursework, and tried to forget. But healing wasn't linear. It came in stutters, in quiet mornings, in the first time. I laughed without flinching, in the way my chest didn't tighten every time I heard his name. Then one night, I found him outside my dorm. Leaning against the wall like he belonged there, like no time had passed. His face was drawn, eyes darker than I remembered. He straightened when he saw me, pushing off the bricks like it had taken everything in him to stand still that long. "I've been looking for you," he said, voice soft. I didn't answer. I didn't move. He exhaled. I messed up. That night, I thought if I just said what they needed to hear, it'd go away. That no one would get hurt. I folded my arms, steadying myself. But someone did. Dean flinched, shame tightening his features. I know. I didn't mean for it to be like that. You meant more to me than I knew how to admit. I let the silence stretch between us, a slow test of sincerity. For once, he didn't fill it with charm or excuses, just stood there, waiting. Finally, I asked, "Why are you here now?" He stepped forward, cautiously. "Because I can't keep living in two halves. Because you were the only thing in my life that felt real, and I let fear wreck it." I studied him, the boy who'd hidden behind smirks and touchdowns, now stripped of everything but regret. I didn't know if I could trust him. I didn't know if I could trust myself. But something in his voice, the tremor, the quiet conviction, unlocked something I'd buried. "This isn't easy," I said. "I'm not asking for easy," he replied. "Just honesty. This time for real." The moment teetered, fragile, unfinished. I didn't reach for him. Not yet, but I didn't walk away either. Maybe that was the beginning of something else, not the fairy tale we'd tried to fake. Something harder, messier, truer. We stood there, under flickering light and shifting shadows, not lovers, not strangers. Something in between, something we would have to name ourselves. And maybe, just maybe this time, we wouldn't let it be nothing.